We've all felt it. That sudden chill in the air when your partner withdraws. It's like the cord that charges the relationship is only partially plugged in. And the full current isn't making it through. And it's a hard place to be when somebody withdraws, somebody that we care about, somebody whose attention and approval we want. I don't think I'm alone in this, at least. I know it's hard for me when my partner withdraws. I have to work to not take it personally and to be patient and to keep myself from panicking. So what I'm going to share with you today are some of the things that I've learned. I'm going to start by just talking about some of the reasons that somebody might withdraw in a relationship. One of those is a fear of intimacy. Many of us, so many of us, have a fear of being open, of being vulnerable. We're afraid of being hurt again. And so when a relationship gets to a certain level and that intimacy becomes too great, it's scary. And so we pull back. I like to compare intimacy with the acclimation that a diver has to go through when they're coming up from the depths. They have to ascend a certain amount and then they have to pause and let the body get used to that level before they can climb just a little bit further. And then they have to pause again. And that's often how intimacy in a relationship works. And those pauses, sometimes those are those withdrawals. So this is one of those, on its own, it's not necessarily a big deal. Be patient with it. It's okay to push for greater intimacy and to not put up with the withdrawal for long. But at the same time, have some empathy because it's hard. It's hard to open up. Another reason that people might withdraw is a fear of rejection. So this is similar to the first one, even though it's motivated slightly differently. So often when we're afraid of being rejected, we choose to leave first because then we're not hurt, right? If I leave you before you can leave me, you can't hurt me. So sometimes that's the withdrawal. It's they're afraid of you turning them away. And so they're pulling away before you have that opportunity. And what's really crazy is sometimes this happens because they feel like you've rejected them, that you've been the one who's withdrawn. So definitely be patient again, but also try to understand the root of where this withdrawal is coming from. Sometimes people withdraw because they're flooded with emotion. So flooding occurs when the emotion becomes over the top, completely irrational. Think of your temper tantruming toddler. Well, that's a tongue twister. That's an example of flooding. And when flooding's going on, the brain isn't working. And flooding isn't a comfortable place to be. And so oftentimes when somebody is flooded, in an effort to make that go away, to bring the emotion down to a manageable level, they'll retreat, either emotionally or physically or both. So keep an eye out for signs of flooding. Usually you can tell when the emotion's running high. And also be aware of what might have triggered the flooding. Oftentimes that happens in people that have some unresolved trauma. And so whatever's going on now might have triggered something from their past. So when someone's flooded, you can't talk to them. You can't reason with them. You need to give them a little space and a little time. And they'll come back to themselves. And then you can have those conversations. Sometimes people withdraw because they're angry. And this kind of comes from two different places. Some people are afraid of their anger, or they're afraid of confrontation. And so whenever they feel anger, they pull away because they feel like that's safer. They don't want to lash out at anybody. Others hide their anger and they withdraw when they're angry because they've been taught that that's the right thing to do. They've been conditioned to believe that anger is never an appropriate emotion and that you should never show anger. And so they almost feel shameful when they feel that way. And so they hide. They're covering their anger. This is another one of those where, as hard as it is, you've got to give them some time. There's a reason that they're withdrawing right now. Sometimes people withdraw because of external pressures. Relationships don't exist in a vacuum. And so maybe they've got a particularly intense time at work right now, and their mind is completely fixated on that. Maybe they have a friend that's in crisis, and they're overly concerned about that situation. Now, of course, ideally, they'd open up to you about this, and so you would know why they are withdrawing. So you wouldn't be stuck wondering if it was something that you did. But oftentimes, they may not be aware on their own that they're withdrawing. They might not even be that tuned into it. And even if they are aware, sometimes our partners want to protect us. And so when there's something that's particularly heavy or troubling, maybe they want to try to fix it on their own before they talk to you about it. All right, a break from some of the heaviness for a little bit. One reason that people withdraw that is completely and totally okay is because they're an introvert. Raising my hand here. Introverts need time alone to recharge. And if we don't get that, we become irritable, frazzled. I like to compare it to kind of that over-caffeinated sort of feeling. It's not okay. It's a very, very fragile place to be. And so as we get to know ourselves and know what we need, when we figure out that we're getting close to that space, we'll often withdraw. Now, ideally, you communicate that to those around you so that they know that it has nothing at all to do with them. But if you're an extrovert, married to an introvert, or in a relationship with an introvert, be aware of that there's going to be times when they just need time alone, and they may or may not be great about communicating that to you. Just know that has absolutely nothing to do with you. They just need some time to themselves so that they can come back to themselves. And please give them that time, because if you do, they'll be a much better person and a much happier partner. All right, and then finally, another reason that people withdraw comes back to a very, very common pattern. Gottman calls it the pursuer-withdrawer dance, or the pursuer-distancer dance. And oh, what a choreography it is. So here's the way this dance works. One person withdraws. The other person then becomes needy. They become fearful. And so they grasp. Well, what happens when they grasp? The person that is running then withdraws even further. And so on and so forth. So ultimately, instead of both people coming together, you end up where one is always chasing and one is always withdrawing. It's a pretty damaging pattern, and it's also a pretty common pattern. So what I'm going to tell you now can actually help you if you find yourself in that pattern. Or even if you're not in that pattern, but you're stuck in the unenviable position of waiting while your partner has withdrawn. So these are some things for you to not do when your partner withdraws, and then also things for you to do when your partner withdraws. On the don't list, don't take it personally prematurely. Notice I said prematurely because yes, this might have something to do with you, but don't assume that before you know otherwise. Don't smother them. Again, that just leads them to run away more. I like to compare this to a story about my childhood dog. She used to delight in running out of the house. And at the beginning, whenever she would get loose, I would run after her. Well, guess what she would do? She'd run faster. And eventually I learned that if I ran the other way Or if I just sat down calmly, she'd come back to me. And that's kind of how it is when your partner withdraws as well. If you grasp, if you reach out too much, you're going to suffocate them. And what are they going to do? They're just going to keep pulling away. So don't hold on too tightly. Don't withdraw yourself. Sometimes we do this in kind of a tit for tat or an I'll show you what it feels like. Doesn't work. Don't obsess over the fact that your partner has withdrawn. I know that sometimes that's easier said than done, especially for those of us that have abandonment issues or tend towards anxiety. But obsession's not going to help you at all, and it's not going to change the situation. Keep yourself busy. Don't enable them. If they've got some tough stuff they have to deal with, let them deal with it. Think tough love, not sacrificial love. Okay, so that's what not to do if your partner withdraws. Here's what you can do. Do set boundaries. Maybe you give them a deadline. You can communicate that, or maybe you just say to yourself, I will put up with this for this long and no longer. Make sure that you take care of yourself. You're kind of in a limbo right now, and that's a hard place to be. So pay attention to yourself. Push for an explanation. It's perfectly okay to say, you seem a little withdrawn lately. Can you tell me what's going on? And if they do talk to you, try to listen without judgment, because judgment will only cause them to pull back some more. Be introspective. Look into yourself. Think about, why are you responding the way that you're responding to this? Why is this bothering you so much? And then finally, offer your support. Ideally, in a relationship, you're operating as a team. And so communicate that to them. Let them know, hey, I'm with you. We're in this together. We'll get through this together. And then finally, as you are in this position of trying so hard to be patient and calm while your partner is withdrawn and you are waiting for the reasons why or for them to return to you, remember this. You can never control another person's actions, but you can always control your response. So focus your attentions there.